High Admiral Ven Calera stood at the observation deck of the Velaran flagship Eternal Light, her iridescent scales reflecting the soft glow of distant stars. The massive view screen before her displayed what the Council had dismissed as impossible: the complete destruction of the Centauri Defense Fleet, one of the most sophisticated armadas in known space. "Play it again," she commanded, her dual hearts racing as she watched the footage for the 20th time. The Shadow's warm vessels, black as the void itself, tore through the Centauri's energy shields like they were made of gossamer. Hundreds of ships, crewed by thousands of the finest warriors in the Velaran Empire, reduced to debris in mere minutes. High Admiral, her second-in-command, Commander Rix, approached with characteristic precision in his movements. "The Council demands an update on our containment strategy." Calera's facial fins flattened against her head, a sign of deep distress among her people. "Containment. The Shadow's Worm has already taken 3 systems. There is nothing to contain." She turned to face her subordinate, noting the fear poorly hidden behind his professional demeanor. "We need something different. Something the Swarm hasn't encountered before." "The Exploration Archives, High Admiral." Rix's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "There might be something there, something the Council overlooked." Calera knew exactly what he meant. 3 cycles ago, their long-range scouts had discovered a peculiar species on a blue-green world in an unremarkable solar system. The Council had dismissed them as primitives, barely worth monitoring. Their technology was crude, their society fragmented, their weapons laughably simple compared to Velaran energy lances and quantum disruptors. But they had something else, something that had caught Calera's attention even then. She accessed the classified files, bringing up footage from the initial observation mission. Humans, they called themselves. The images showed their crude warfare, their conflicts, their battles. But what fascinated Calera wasn't their primitive projectile weapons or their basic space vessels. It was their adaptability, their relentlessness, their absolute refusal to accept defeat. "Commander Rix," she said, her decision made. "Set course for the human world. Earth." "High Admiral." Rix's scales paled. "The Council has expressly forbidden contact with pre-FTL species. The penalties will be irrelevant if the Shadow's Worm consumes our civilization." Calera cut him off. "The Council's rules were made for times of peace. We are far beyond that now." As the Eternal Light prepared for the jump to Earth system, Calera reviewed more of the human footage. She watched their military exercises, their simulated battles, their training routines, where Velaran warriors relied on precision and technological superiority. Humans embraced chaos. They trained for every conceivable scenario, prepared for every possible failure. They fought in the snow, in the desert, in dense forests and deep oceans. They practiced fighting without weapons, without technology, without support. Most remarkably, they seemed to thrive on being underestimated. The jump to Earth's system took 3 standard days. When they emerged from hyperspace, Calera ordered their ship to remain behind the moon, out of easy detection range. "Scan their communications," she ordered. "I want to know what we're dealing with." The data that came back was surprising. In the 3 cycles since their last observation, human technology had advanced significantly. They had established bases on their moon and neighboring planet, developed more sophisticated weapons, and appeared to be on the verge of cracking FTL travel. "They're advancing faster than any species we've encountered," Rix noted, his scientific curiosity temporarily overriding his anxiety about their unsanctioned mission. "Their rate of technological progress is almost exponential." "Not almost," Calera corrected him. "It is exponential, and that's exactly why we need them." She straightened her command sash, a nervous gesture she'd never quite eliminated. "Prepare a first contact package. I'll make the approach myself." "High Admiral." Rix's protest was immediate. "Protocol dictates. Protocol would have us watch while the Shadow's Worm devours everything we've built over 10,000 cycles." Calera snapped. "The humans have something we need, Commander. something that might save us all. And what is that, High Admiral? Kalera's gaze returned to the view screen, where the blue-green pearl of Earth hung suspended in the void. The ability to win even when victory seems impossible. The human response to their arrival was predictably chaotic. When the eternal light revealed itself and broadcast their first contact message, Earth's military forces scrambled into action. Missiles were armed, fighters were launched, and every weapon on the planet capable of reaching orbit was trained on their position, exactly as Kalera had expected. "They're hailing us," Rix reported. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. Put them through," Kalera ordered. "All of them." The view screen filled with faces, military commanders, political leaders, scientists, all demanding explanations, making threats, offering greetings. Kalera waited until the initial burst of communication subsided, then spoke. "People of Earth," she began, the translation matrix converting her words into every major human language. "I am High Admiral Ven Kalera of the Velaran Empire. We come to you not as conquerors or explorers, but as supplicants. Our civilization faces extinction at the hands of an enemy unlike any we have encountered. We need your help." There was a moment of stunned silence. Then one of the humans, a military commander by his uniform, spoke up. "You're saying that you, an advanced alien civilization, with faster-than-light travel and energy weapons, need help from us?" "Yes," Kalera replied simply. "Because what we need isn't advanced technology. What we need is something uniquely human, something we've observed in you that no other species we've encountered possesses to the same degree." "And what's that?" another human asked. Kalera's facial fins spread in what her species considered a smile. "The ability to achieve the impossible through sheer determination and adaptability. The capacity to face overwhelming odds and find a way to prevail. The quintessentially human trait of turning disadvantages into advantages." The humans exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pride, skepticism, and curiosity. Finally, a woman in a formal suit spoke up. "Perhaps, High Admiral Kalera, you should tell us more about this enemy you're facing." And so Kalera explained about the Shadow Swarm, showing them the footage of the Centauri Defense Fleet's destruction. She watched their faces as they absorbed the magnitude of the threat, noting with approval how quickly they began asking tactical questions, proposing strategies, thinking of ways to combat an enemy that by all logical measures was unbeatable. Already, they were doing exactly what she had hoped they would do, refusing to accept the impossible as insurmountable. "We'll need time to discuss this," the human leaders said finally, "to consult with our governments, our military commanders, our people." "Of course," Kalera agreed. "But please understand, time is not on our side. The Shadow Swarm advances rapidly, and once they detect our presence here, they will come. And Earth, for all its remarkable progress, is not yet ready to face them alone." As the transmission ended, Rix turned to his commander. "Do you really believe they can help us, High Admiral? They're centuries behind us technologically." Kalera's gaze remained fixed on the image of Earth. "Commander, I've studied their history. These humans have gone from primitive flight to landing on their moon in less than 70 of their years. They've survived multiple near-extinction events, rebuilt from global wars, and continued to advance despite countless setbacks. They don't just adapt, they evolve, and they do it faster than any species we've ever encountered." She turned to face him, her expression fierce with determination. "The Shadow Swarm defeats its enemies by being technologically superior and completely alien in its thinking. But humans specialize in defeating technologically superior enemies. And as for alien thinking," she gestured to herself with a small laugh, "well, they're about to get a crash course in that, aren't they?" The fate of multiple civilizations now rested on whether she had judged these humans correctly. But as Kalera watched their planetary defense forces maintain their disciplined formation around her ship, even while engaging in diplomatic dialogue, she felt her confidence grow. The Shadow Swarm was about to learn what happened when you backed a primitive species into a corner, and Kalara had a feeling they wouldn't like the lesson. Colonel Sarah Chen stood in the massive hangar of the Eternal Light, trying not to stare at the towering Velaran warriors around her. After 3 weeks of intensive diplomatic negotiations, the United Earth Defense Council had agreed to a military alliance with the Velaran Empire. Now came the hard part, making it work. "Your projectile weapons seem inefficient," Commander Rix observed, examining the modified M4A2 plasma hybrid rifle in his hands. His facial fins twitched in what Chen had learned was an expression of puzzlement. "Our energy lances have twice the range and require no physical ammunition." Chen smiled, taking the rifle back. "Sometimes inefficient is exactly what you need. The Shadow Swarm adapts to energy weapons, right? Their shields evolve to match the frequency." At Rix's nod, she continued, "But they can't adapt to a piece of metal moving at hypersonic speeds. Physics is physics." An interesting perspective. High Admiral Kalara's voice came from behind them, and a very human one. "This is exactly why we came to Earth." Chen turned to face the Velaran leader, still amazed by how the Admiral's scales seemed to shift colors with her mood. Right now, they shimmered with an intensity that suggested excitement. "We've been studying the footage of Shadow Swarm attacks," Chen reported. "Our tactical analysts have identified several potential weaknesses." "Weaknesses?" Rix's fins flattened in disbelief. "The swarm has no weaknesses. That's why they've been unstoppable." "Everything has weaknesses," Chen countered. "Sometimes you just have to create them." She activated her tablet, projecting a holographic display of a Shadow Swarm battle formation. "See how they move? It's perfect, synchronized. Too perfect. That level of coordination means they're networked, sharing a hive mind, or at least some form of collective consciousness." Kalara's scales shifted to a deep blue of interest. "Yes, that's correct. It's what makes them so effective. It's also what makes them vulnerable." Chen grinned. "Perfect coordination means perfect predictability. And anything predictable can be trapped." The next few days were a crash course in cultural exchange. Human military specialists trained alongside Velaran warriors, each species learning from the other. The Velarans were amazed by human hand-to-hand combat techniques, fighting styles developed over thousands of years that didn't rely on technology or physical advantages. "Your species is physically weaker than almost every opponent you might face," a Velaran combat instructor named Kex observed after a particularly intense training session. "Yet you've developed ways to use that weakness as strength." "That's humanity in a nutshell," Chen replied, wiping sweat from her brow. "We're too stubborn to accept limitations." But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Cultural clashes were inevitable. The Velaran's hierarchical society struggled to adapt to the human military's more flexible command structure. The concept of guerrilla warfare seemed dishonorable to them at first, until Chen's team demonstrated how it had allowed numerically and technologically inferior forces to prevail throughout human history. "You must understand," Kalara explained to the human commanders during a strategy session. "For 10,000 cycles, the Velaran Empire has relied on technological superiority and strict adherence to proven military doctrine. The idea of improvisation, of deliberately appearing weak to draw in an enemy, is exactly what you need right now," Chen finished. "The Shadow Swarm expects you to fight like Velarans. They've adapted to counter your tactics, your technology, your entire way of thinking. But they've never encountered anything like humanity." The breakthrough came during a joint training exercise. A human special forces team, using modified Velaran stealth technology combined with old-fashioned camouflage techniques, managed to infiltrate the Eternal Light's command center undetected, a feat that was supposed to be impossible. "This is what we've been trying to show you," Chen explained to a stunned Velaran security team. "Technology isn't everything. Sometimes the best solution is the most basic one." As if to prove her point, long-range sensors detected a Shadow Swarm scout ship entering the solar system. Earth's defensive grid, hastily upgraded with Valoran technology, immediately went dark, making the planet appear undefended. "They're taking the bait," Chen observed from the Eternal Light's command center. "They think they found an easy target." The scout ship moved closer, its sensors probing the seemingly primitive human defenses. It never detected the network of quantum mines, designed by human engineers and built with Valoran technology, until it was too late. The explosion lit up space like a miniature sun. "Impressive," Kalara admitted, her scales shimmering with approval. "But the swarm will learn from this. They always do." "Counting on it," Chen replied with a fierce grin. "That's why our next trap will be completely different. The key isn't to find one perfect solution. It's to keep changing the problem." The joint human-Valoran force began to take shape. Human tactical doctrine was merged with Valoran technology, creating weapons and strategies unlike anything seen before in the galaxy. Special operations teams composed of both species learned to work together, combining Valoran precision with human adaptability. "They're retreating," Rix announced, his voice tight with disbelief. "By the Ancient Ones, they're actually retreating." The surviving Shadows Worm ships were pulling back, their perfect formation shattered, their hive mind struggling to process the chaos of human combat doctrine. But Chen knew better than to celebrate too early. "All ships maintain battle stations," she ordered. "This isn't over." She was right. As the Shadows Worm withdrew, their ships underwent a transformation. The black hulls shifted and writhed, adapting in ways they'd never shown before. They were learning, evolving, becoming something new. "High Admiral," Chen called to Kalara, "are you seeing this?" "Indeed," Kalara replied, her scales now a deep purple of concern. "They're not just retreating. They're changing their entire strategy." The remaining Shadows Worm ships suddenly split apart, each vessel becoming dozens of smaller craft. The hive mind was adapting not just tactically, but strategically, copying the human approach of unpredictable, independent action. "They're learning from us," Chen realized, "using our own tactics against us." "But that's exactly what we wanted," Kalara responded, her scales shifting to a brilliant gold of triumph. "Because in doing so, they've revealed something crucial." Chen understood immediately. By adapting to fight like humans, the Shadows Worm had demonstrated that their hive mind could be forced to change its fundamental nature, and anything that could change could be corrupted. "All ships, initiate Operation Babel," Chen commanded. A new wave of signals burst from the Allied fleet, not attacks but information. Viruses designed by human programmers, working alongside Valoran quantum engineers. The programs attacked the Shadows Worm's hive mind through the very adaptations they'd made to counter human tactics. The effect was devastating. Shadows Worm ships began firing on each other, their collective consciousness fractured by the viral attack. Some vessels simply shut down, their systems overwhelmed by conflicting commands. "It's working," Rix exclaimed. "The hive mind is turning against itself." But even as victory seemed within reach, a massive energy surge erupted from the largest remaining Shadows Worm vessel. A signal, unlike anything they'd detected before, pulsed through space. The disabled swarm ships began to power up again, their hulls morphing into new configurations. "They've activated some kind of failsafe," Chen reported, her hands flying over the tactical controls. "A hive mind is rebooting, purging our virus." Kalara's hologram flickered as she processed this information. "Then we've learned something vital about our enemy. They can be hurt. They can be forced to change. And most importantly, they can feel fear," Chen finished. "Look at how quickly they activated that failsafe. They weren't just adapting tactically anymore. They were afraid of being destroyed." As the remaining Shadows Worm ships disappeared into hyperspace, the Allied fleet began rescue operations and damage assessment. The victory had been costly, but they had achieved something unprecedented. They had forced the Shadows Worm to retreat. More importantly, they had proven that the enemy wasn't invincible. The integration of human tactical doctrine with Valoran technology, had created something new, something the Shadow Swarm couldn't simply absorb and adapt to. They had shown that sometimes the best way to defeat a technologically superior enemy was to make them fight on your terms. "We've bloodied their nose," Chen told her crew as they began the journey back to Earth. "But now they'll be coming back stronger, more prepared. They'll be ready for everything we threw at them today." Indeed, Kalara agreed, her scales now a shifting pattern of determination and concern. "Which means we need to be ready with something completely different." As the Allied fleet regrouped, Chen couldn't help but smile. The Shadow Swarm thought they had adapted to human tactics, but they had only scratched the surface. They were about to learn another fundamental truth about humanity. Just when you think you've figured us out, we changed the rules of the game entirely. Earth's orbital defense grid lit up with warnings as the largest Shadow Swarm fleet ever detected emerged from hyperspace. Colonel Chen stood in the Normandy's command center, watching as thousands of enemy ships filled the view screen. Their black hulls now transformed into configurations they'd never seen before. "They've been busy," she muttered, studying the tactical display. The Shadow Swarm vessels were no longer moving in perfect synchronization. Instead, they demonstrated a terrifying mix of hive-mind coordination and individual unpredictability, a dark reflection of humanity's own tactics. High Admiral Kalara's hologram appeared, her scales a deep crimson of concern. "They're attacking multiple systems simultaneously. Earth, Velara Prime, and every major colony world. This isn't just a counterattack, it's an extinction strike." "Then it's time for Operation Phoenix," Chen replied, entering commands into her tactical console. Across Earth's surface, hidden installations activated. Decades of human preparation for alien invasion, combined with months of Valoran technological integration, were about to be put to the ultimate test. The Shadow Swarm's first wave approached Earth's atmosphere, only to encounter something unexpected. The planet's magnetic field suddenly intensified, twisted by massive electromagnetic generators buried in the Earth's crust. Swarm ships tumbled out of formation, their navigational systems disrupted. "Magnetic warfare," Rix observed from his position on the Eternal Light. "Using a planet's natural field as a weapon. We never considered such a possibility." But the Shadow Swarm adapted quickly. Their ships transformed, generating counterfields to stabilize their approach. That's when the second phase of Earth's defense activated. Hundreds of ground-based particle accelerators, originally built for scientific research, fired in perfect sequence. The coordinated beams created a lattice of destructive energy in the upper atmosphere. "We call it the crossfire grid," Chen explained as enemy ships began breaking apart. "The physicists have been working on it since we first detected the Shadow Swarm." The enemy's response was immediate and devastating. Their ships combined into larger formations, creating massive energy shields that could withstand the particle beam network. Then they opened fire, their weapons enhanced by everything they'd learned from previous encounters. Cities around the globe lit up with defensive fire as humanity fought for survival. Similar battles raged across every inhabited world in known space. The Shadow Swarm had learned from their previous defeat. Instead of relying on overwhelming force, they now employed tactics that mimicked the very species they were trying to destroy. "They're adapting faster than ever," Kalara reported, her hologram flickering as enemy fire rocked her ship. "Our previous strategies are becoming useless." "Good," Chen replied, surprising the Valoran admiral. "Because that means they're playing our game now. All ships, execute Protocol Omega." The Allied fleet suddenly broke apart, each ship seemingly acting at random. But this was randomness with purpose, a strategy based on chaos theory and quantum uncertainty. The Shadow Swarm's hive mind, for all its attempts to mimic human unpredictability, still operated on logical principles. It couldn't truly comprehend or predict genuine chaos. "Launch the Fireflies," Chen ordered. From every Allied ship, swarms of tiny drones emerged. These weren't the conventional combat drones from previous battles. These were something new. Each one contained a miniature quantum computer running a unique algorithm, making them truly unpredictable even to their own controllers. The fireflies darted through the Shadow's warm formations, their erratic movements defying prediction. Some exploded, creating localized electromagnetic pulses. Others attached themselves to enemy ships, introducing random commands into their control systems. Still others simply transmitted nonsense data, adding to the chaos. The hive mind is struggling to process the random inputs, Rix reported. Their adaptation algorithms are caught in recursive loops. But the Shadow Swarm wasn't finished. Their ships began to merge into enormous structures, creating weapons of unprecedented power. Energy beams capable of cracking planets lashed out at the Allied fleet. All ships, emergency maneuvers. Chen shouted as the Normandy barely avoided a blast that vaporized 3 nearby vessels. They're not just adapting anymore. They're desperate. That's when she noticed something crucial. The Shadow Swarm's new superweapons, while devastatingly powerful, were drawing massive amounts of energy from their hive mind network. The strain was showing in subtle ways, microscopic delays in their reactions, tiny flaws in their coordination. They're overextending themselves, Chen realized. High Admiral, are you seeing this? Indeed, Kalara replied, her scales now shifting with excitement. They're so focused on matching our power that they're compromising their greatest strength, their unity. Chen quickly formulated a plan. It was risky, perhaps suicidal, but they were out of options. All ships concentrate fire on their superweapons. Make them think we're afraid of their power. Make them commit everything to those platforms. The Allied fleet launched an all-out assault on the Shadow Swarm's largest constructs. The enemy responded predictably, diverting more and more energy to power their superweapons. Their smaller ships began to show signs of reduced efficiency as the hive mind focused its resources on maintaining the massive weapons platforms. That's when Chen revealed humanity's final surprise. Hidden in the debris of destroyed ships, in the static of battle communications, in the very chaos of combat itself, was a pattern. The seemingly random attacks of the fireflies, the erratic movements of the fleet, the concentrated fire on the superweapons, all of it formed part of a greater design. Execute final protocol, Chen commanded. Every human and Velaran ship broadcasted a specific frequency, creating a resonance pattern that built upon itself. The fireflies, scattered throughout the enemy fleet, amplified the signal. The Shadow Swarm's hive mind, already strained by maintaining their superweapons, couldn't adapt quickly enough. The effect cascaded through their network. Ships began to lose cohesion, their adaptive hulls unable to maintain form. The superweapons, drawing too much power from the compromised network, began to collapse in on themselves. The hive mind is breaking down, Rix announced, his voice filled with awe. They're losing their connection to each other. Across the galaxy, on every battlefield where the Shadow Swarm had struck, their ships began to fail. Without the hive mind to coordinate their actions, their attempts to mimic human tactics became their undoing. Individual vessels, suddenly cut off from the collective, found themselves unable to function effectively. But victory came at a terrible cost. Dozens of human and Velaran ships had been destroyed. The surfaces of multiple worlds bore the scars of orbital bombardment. The Allied fleet had been reduced to a fraction of its original size. As the remaining Shadow Swarm ships began to retreat in disarray, Chen allowed herself a moment to mourn the lost. Then she turned to the task of coordinating rescue operations, because that was another uniquely human trait. Even in victory, we think of those who need help. This isn't the end, Kalara warned as the last enemy ships disappeared into hyperspace. They'll be back with new adaptations, new strategies. Of course they will, Chen replied with a grim smile. And we'll be ready with something they've never seen before, because that's what humans do. We never stop innovating, never stop evolving. And now, thanks to this alliance, neither do the Velarans. As the Allied fleet began the long process of recovery and rebuilding, Chen couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious not through overwhelming force or technological superiority, but through our most fundamental traits: creativity, adaptability, and the absolute refusal to accept defeat. 1 year after the Battle of Earth, Colonel Sarah Chen stood before the newly formed Galactic Defense Council, her dress uniform adorned with medals from both human and Velaran military forces. The chamber, built in the ruins of what had once been Geneva, represented something unprecedented: a true partnership between species. High Admiral Kalara, her scales now permanently touched with gold, a mark of highest honor among her people, stood beside her. Together, they had been tasked with presenting their findings on the Shadows Worm conflict and their recommendations for the future. The Shadows Worm threat is contained, Chen began, activating the holographic display, but not eliminated. Their surviving ships have retreated to unknown regions of space, presumably to rebuild and adapt. We must assume they will return, possibly with capabilities we haven't yet imagined. And that, Kalara continued, is precisely why this council exists. The war taught us that isolation leads to stagnation. It is through collaboration, through the sharing of not just technology but perspectives, that we achieve true strength. The assembled representatives, human, Velaran, and now members of a dozen other species that had joined the alliance during the war, nodded in agreement. The success of the human-Velaran partnership had sparked a revolution in interstellar relations. Our victory wasn't just about military strength, Chen explained, bringing up footage from key battles. It was about embracing fundamental truths that humans have known for millennia. That true adaptability comes from diversity of thought, that strength often emerges from perceived weakness, and that the ability to change is more valuable than any single advantage. The images showed how human combat doctrine had evolved during the war, merging with Velaran technology to create something entirely new. But more importantly, they showed how this approach had spread beyond military applications. Research teams composed of human and Velaran scientists were developing technologies that would have been impossible for either species alone. Human creativity combined with Velaran precision had led to breakthroughs in everything from medicine to faster-than-light travel. The Shadows Worm's greatest mistake, Kalara observed, was assuming that adaptability meant simply copying what works. True adaptation, as humans have shown us, means being willing to discard everything you think you know and embrace entirely new ways of thinking. Chen nodded, switching the display to show the reconstruction efforts across various worlds. This is perhaps our greatest achievement, not the victories in battle, but what we've built in peace. The images showed new cities rising from war-torn planets, their architecture a stunning blend of human and Velaran design. Schools where children of both species learned together, each gaining understanding of the other's perspective. Research facilities where scientists from dozens of worlds collaborated on solving the galaxy's greatest challenges. But we cannot become complacent, Chen warned, her expression serious. The Shadows Worm taught us the danger of believing we've found the perfect solution to any problem. We must continue to innovate, to question, to evolve. She brought up the final display: plans for the new Galactic Defense Force. Unlike the rigid hierarchy of the old Velaran military or the fragmented structure of Earth's pre-war forces, this was something new. Small, autonomous units capable of independent action, but trained to work together in countless combinations. Technology that embraced both logic and chaos, precision and creativity. We are creating something unprecedented, Kalara declared, her scales shimmering with pride. Not just a military force or a political alliance, but a new way of approaching the challenges of our universe. As the presentation concluded, questions came from the assembled representatives. Some were concerned about the resources required for such ambitious plans. Others worried about maintaining cultural identity in the face of such close cooperation. These are exactly the kind of questions we should be asking, Chen responded. It's through this kind of dialogue, this willingness to voice concerns and find solutions together, that we grow stronger. Later, standing on the observation deck of the rebuilt Eternal Light, Chen and Kalara watched Earth's sunset together. The planet's atmosphere scattered the light in ways that made Kalara's scales shimmer with all the colors of the rainbow. Did you ever imagine, when you first came to Earth, that this would be the outcome? Chen asked. Kalara's scales shifted to a thoughtful blue. I hoped for an ally against the Shadows Worm. Instead, we found partners in building a better galaxy. She turned to Chen. The Council archives show that many advanced species discovered Earth over the centuries. All of them dismissed humans as primitive, violent, unpredictable. None of them saw what I saw. And what was that? That those very traits, your seeming primitiveness, your embrace of violence when necessary, your unpredictability, were not weaknesses but strengths waiting to be understood. Humans don't just adapt, you help others adapt. You don't just survive, you show others how to survive. Chen smiled, watching as the first stars became visible in the darkening sky. And now we face our greatest challenge: maintaining peace, building something lasting. Indeed, Kalara agreed. The Shadows Worm will return one day, probably with capabilities we cannot yet imagine. But they will find something they don't expect. A galaxy that has learned to think like humans while maintaining the strengths of every member species. As night fell over Earth, lights began to twinkle in the cities below. They were different now. Some glowing with the soft bioluminescence preferred by Velerans, others pulsing with human energy and vigor. Like everything else in this new era, they represented a harmony of differences, a strength born from diversity. The Shadows Worm had sought to consume and copy the strengths of other species. In doing so, they had inadvertently brought about their own worst nightmare: a galaxy united not in uniformity, but in celebration of differences. A civilization that didn't just adapt to change, but embraced it as an opportunity for growth. And at the heart of it all was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy: the understanding that true strength comes not from being perfect, but from being willing to fail, learn, and try again. That victory doesn't always go to the strongest or most advanced, but to those who refuse to accept the impossible as a limit. As Chen and Kalara turned to leave the observation deck, a priority message flashed on their communicators. An unknown signal had been detected at the edge of charted space, something that matched no known pattern. Instead of fear, both felt a surge of excitement. Whatever this new challenge was, they would face it together, ready to adapt, ready to evolve, ready to prove once again that the greatest adventures come not from knowing all the answers, but from being willing to ask new questions.